everyone, and welcome back to Ascended Masters 101, where we talk all about the teachings of the Ascended Masters. And in the last episode, we spoke about forgiveness and why it is so critical on the spiritual path to make sure that we are forgiving both ourselves and others as we make our way along life's journey. And we covered 5 incredible benefits that come our way when we do forgive. And if you missed it, I'll link to that below, because I feel like when we know the benefit, what the spiritual reward is for doing the work of forgiveness, it can be just so much easier to do so. And those rewards are fantastic. And finding that resolution and that peace that comes with truly forgiving is so worth it. So I have found that knowing the benefits and the importance of forgiveness makes forgiving easier. And I found that clearing up those misconceptions about forgiveness makes forgiveness easier. And so in this video, we are going to debunk 3 major myths about forgiveness, because we want to forgive, right? And we're going to forgive. And the Ascended Masters help us come at this from multiple angles until we have all the encouragement and all the insight and all the tools that we need to forgive. So let's go ahead and debunk 3 myths about forgiveness. Myth number 1 is that forgiveness condones the wrongdoing. I know that for me, it was sometimes hard to forgive because I had this idea, and I don't know where I got it, but I had this idea that if I forgave the wrong that was done, then I was somehow condoning the wrongdoing. Like I was saying that it was okay that it had happened, and it wasn't okay that it happened. And so I was stuck trying to forgive. But when I learned about what the Ascended Masters say about this, it was so much easier for me to forgive. And I want to share that insight with you, because I don't want you to get stuck on this myth like I did. So the Ascended Masters explain that people have a soul, right? The good part of themselves that is trying to get back to God. But people, each one of us, also has an unreal, kind of like ugly part of themselves that the Ascended Masters call the dweller on the threshold, or dweller for short. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so this dweller wants to devour the soul and to reign, to sit on the throne of your being, to be the master of the house. And when this happens, people have essentially become the worst version of themselves. And you and I as souls must fight their dweller and slay that beast of our own unreality and claim our right to be the master of the house. And so we all have this inner war going on between the light and the darkness of our own being. And so a big part of the teachings of the Ascended Masters is to overcome this dweller on the threshold and become the master of our beings. Now, what the Ascended Masters explain is that when we forgive someone, we are forgiving their soul. The soul who is trying to fight off her own unreality and claim her spiritual victory. And we can relate to the soul, right? Because each of us is a soul. We love our soul, and we love the souls of others. So we're not forgiving people's unreal self, their dweller on the threshold. We are forgiving their souls. And that helped me so much, because I could look for the good in the person. And sometimes you do have to look pretty deep past the unreality, past the dweller, and see the goodness of the person's soul and forgive that soul and pray that soul be delivered from their dweller, just like we want to be free from our own dweller. We're all in this together, right? So that really, really helped me, you guys, to bust that myth that forgiving condones the action. So let's move on to myth number 2. Myth number 2 about forgiveness is that forgiveness lets people get away with the wrongdoing, or that by forgiving, you're letting people get away with not being accountable for what they did. And I totally fell for this myth. I hesitated to forgive because I felt like if I did, they were somehow getting away with it, and that justice was somehow being denied, and that didn't feel fair and just to me. And I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not true. The Ascended Masters teach extensively about karma, which I think is summarized really beautiful in Galatians. And it says there, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap," right? And This goes for both bad and good sowings. The Ascended Masters teach that there are certain laws of the universe, and one of these laws is the law of karma. And the law of karma states that our thoughts and our words and our deeds, both positive and negative, they create a chain of cause and effect, and that we will personally experience the effect of every cause that we have set into motion. And that comes from a footnote in volume 45, number 2. So everything that we think, everything we say and do, whether those are good words and deeds or not such great ones, those energies will eventually make their way back to us, and we'll be on the receiving end of what we have sent forth. So in terms of karma, I think we can leave it at that for this video. But if you'd like to learn more about the law of karma, we will be working on a video about that in the near future as well. So I think you'll be happy to discover that we actually live in this perfectly just and fair universe, and that God is in control of it all. The Ascended Masters explain that there is no injustice in the universe, and I take so much comfort in that, especially in this kind of turbulent world that we live in today. Things may seem unjust because people misuse their free will, but someday, somehow, whether it's in this life or in the next life or 20 lifetimes from now, whatever we all do, whatever people do will come back to them. It comes back to us. So both good and bad, right? So there is justice, and everything is in perfect order, orchestrated by God according to the law of cycles and the law of karma. So the Ascended Masters teach that we don't need to really worry about the fairness or the justice part. God is the one who metes out justice, and people will be held accountable for their actions. That's God's job, and it's our job to forgive. Isn't that great? We don't need to worry about it. We don't need to feel like it's on us to punish the wrongdoer by withholding forgiveness, or even worse, by taking revenge into our own hands. We don't need to remember the details of the wrongdoing or hold accounting as if we're the judge. We can just let it go and let forgiveness flow from our hearts and move forward, knowing that God is taking care of it. It's our job to forgive. It's God's job to make sure the law of karma is working appropriately. Okay, myth number 3 is that it doesn't hurt us to procrastinate in forgiveness. So the myth is that we can just wait on this till later, maybe circle it around to it next year, and this is not true. This is a myth. Earth is a schoolroom, and beloved Jesus tells us how and why we should promptly handle disagreements on the playground of life. And this is volume 37, number 45. Jesus says, quote, "My children, when you have an argument on the playground and you are angry at this one and that one, apologize to those you have wronged. Call on the law of forgiveness for them and yourselves, and be certain that you kneel in prayer before you retire and ask God to forgive you and all whom you have injured. Do not go to sleep until you have invoked the violet flame to transmute the cause, effect, record, and memory of the incident. Be certain to send love to self-styled enemies as well as to friends who may have been out of line in their interchanges with you. Forgive and forgive again, beloved, for this is the way of the masters," end quote. So this is a really insightful message from beloved Jesus to each one of us. And I think it's interesting that Jesus mentions how we also need to forgive our self-styled enemies and friends who may have been out of line in their interchanges with us. And this can happen really easily, right? This happens to all of us when we are in social close proximity with others, whether those are friends or family. It's easy to accidentally step on one another's toes, even when everyone's really well-meaning. And I'm sure we can all think of lots of examples of this in our lives. But when this happens, it's actually a really great opportunity on the spiritual path, because it highlights for us what those areas are of our psychology that are still being subject to being hurt or offended or affronted or wounded that we may not have known about. And so when this happens, we can look at ourselves and we can say, why did this or that action get a rise out of me? What unreality or point of non-resolution within me was it that reacted to this? And it's an invitation for self-reflection. And so the masters have encouraged us often to work on the healing of our psychology, because when we heal those wounds within, we can more easily forgive and be non-reactive. We can be more Buddhic and more emotionally unperturbed for longer and longer stretches throughout the day. And we can quickly move forward on our spiritual path. So as we forgive others, we can take that opportunity to heal ourselves. And the violet flame helps so much with all of that. Now, in his comment, Jesus mentioned that we should call upon what's called the law of forgiveness before we go to sleep. And if you'd like to learn more about this, you can watch the video called The Law of Forgiveness. It'll be the next one, I believe, on this playlist, and I'll link to that in the description below. So after he spoke about forgiving at the end of the day, Jesus later went on in his dictation to give 2 reasons for why doing so and why not waiting to forgive is so important. And so reason number 1 is because not doing so actually causes us to lose ground on our spiritual path. And Jesus says, quote, "You cannot afford to lose ground on your spiritual path by allowing any part of your being to be unresolved with me. For I am your Lord and Savior, and I dwell in the hearts of your friends and your enemies," end quote. So we cannot afford to not forgive each night before we go to sleep, because we will lose spiritual ground. Since Jesus dwells in the hearts of our friends and maybe these self-styled enemies, not forgiving them causes us to be unresolved with our own beloved Jesus, our precious Lord and Savior, and we can't allow that to happen, right? So let's forgive right away. Now, the second reason that Jesus gives for forgiving before we go to sleep is maybe even more startling than the first. And I want to read to you this exact quote from Jesus, because it's quite something. I think that spiritual truth really is stranger than fiction. So Jesus says, quote, "The saying, 'Let not the sun go down upon your wrath,' is a warning to all that if you go to sleep at night harboring anger toward friend or foe, your astral sheath, known as the ka or astral ka, may wander about making mischief while you sleep and sleep on. When you awaken, you will have no knowledge or memory of the doings of your ka, yet you will be karmically accountable for the deeds of an uncontrolled anger. So ere the sun set and you retire at night, make your peace with God and man. This is especially important for those who desire to make their ascension in this life. Therefore, do not make bad karma waking or sleeping. To accomplish this, you must maintain God control at all levels of consciousness," end quote. So that's certainly some food for thought. By the way, the astral ka, as described in the TSL encyclopedia, is, quote, "the emotional body when separated from the physical body and ungoverned by the conscious, discriminating Christ mind, as in the sleep state or after death." So I am so grateful to Jesus for teaching us about this so we can be mindful and we can avoid those pitfalls on the spiritual path that we maybe didn't even know were there, and to just run towards the keys for the ascension that they are giving us. Jesus gave us a key for our ascension, saying that making our peace with God and man each night is especially important for those who desire to make their ascension in this life. So let's make the determination to forgive each day and not fall asleep until we have heeded the words of beloved Jesus, the voice of the Good Shepherd who guides us so beautifully on our homeward way. So just to recap really quick, in this video we debunked 3 myths about forgiveness that will hopefully allow us to more quickly and more easily forgive. So thank you so much to each one of you for watching. I love all of you. I just love talking with you about these fantastic teachings. Feel free to leave any comments below. I read them all. I enjoy them, each and every one of them. So God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video in which we will talk about how to forgive. I will see you there.